Hello dear chess friends, I'm International Master Andrey Ostrovskiy and you're welcome to this series of lessons dedicated to King and Pawn Endgames. In this lesson, we will discuss powerful pawns. So obviously, passed pawns play a great role in King and Pawn Endgames, and perhaps the most annoying type of a passed pawn in this type of endgames is the outside passed pawn. Why? You will find out in this example. So let's have a look in this position. We can see that material is even, we have a lot of different pawns, and at first glance looks like white is better because white's king is quite active here. In fact, black is much better. Black is honestly winning in this position because only black has a chance to arrange a favorable situation. So only black can create an outside passed pawn here. So black plays g6. White can't really prevent the appearance of the outside passed pawn on the h file. So let's have a look what is going on. c4, white tries to come up with a counterplay on the other side of the board. h5, g takes h5, g takes h5. King goes to e5, so white tries to stop this pawn, but after h4, king f4, and f5, very good move by the way, black manages to stop king's march towards the pawn. Obviously, white can't take on f5. In this case, black wins instantly by playing h3 and pawn promotes. So black's king is not needed here. White's king is simply out of square, so pawn goes towards h1. So after f5, white's king becomes really passive. And let's have a look what happens to black's one. So after b4, king d6, white doesn't have anything sensible here connected with pawns, so now it's time to play with the king. King goes to e3, and now we can see the difference. So in the initial position, the king was very active, and now to fight this outside passed pawn, this king should occupy a very passive, very ugly position somewhere on the edge of the board, while black's king becomes the main hero and this king just dominates in the center. That is the typical outcome of having the outside passed pawn. So you don't really need to promote this pawn. Your main idea is to deflect the opponent's king attention. And while this king fights this outside passed pawn, you just eliminate other pawns of your opponent. So here there are different ways of playing with black, but the most straightforward one and probably the most efficient one is a5. So black tries to break white's pawns. So for example, after b takes a5, white wins a pawn, but this weakens c5 square, and after king c5, let's have a look what is going on. So king f2, of course, white wants to eliminate this h pawn because white no longer has a counterplay on the queen side, so it makes sense only to try to win that pawn. But after king c4, king g2, and king d3, black is just in time to win f3 pawn. So after king h3, king e3, king h4, and king takes f3, we can see that pawn f5 is being promoted, while white has only doubled pawns on the queen side, so they are stopped easily by pawn b7. So let's have a look if white has a chance to help those pawns to be promoted with a king, but well, after f4, king f6, king e4, f3, f2, and queen, we can see that black is just much faster. And let's say after queen b5, black easily wins, takes a5, takes a2, and so on. So after a5, everything says that it is better for white just to protect b4 pawn, so a3 makes sense here. And after ab4 and ab4, we can see that it became much easier for black to grab pawns on the queen side. That was actually the idea behind playing a5 here. So after h3, concrete calculation shows that black simply wins. So king goes to f2, king goes to e5, king goes to g3, king goes to d4, so that is exactly what we discussed. So while white's king tries to eliminate outside passed pawn, black's king simply becomes a beast and eliminates all other pawns. King takes there, because c5 actually changes nothing. So after king c4, king h3, king takes b4, king g3, king takes c5. Black is already much faster, so black starts pushing his pawns towards the promotion square, while white still has to eliminate f5 pawn. So the only interesting moment is here, after king e4. Of course, to prevent white's king d3 move, it's necessary to spend the time on king c4. And after king e3, let's say king c3. So the same idea, just to gain the opposition, to shoulder white's king away, and to ensure the promotion of the b pawn. So after f4, b3, f5, b2, f6, b1 queen, black is just faster, and the easiest way to stop that pawn and to win it actually is to play queen to f5. So let's come back to king h3 line. This looks very sensible. King takes c4, king goes to g3, king takes b4, king goes to f4, and once again black is just faster here. King c4, king f5, b5, f4, b4, king e6, b3, f5, b2, f6, b1 queen already, and after f7 queen goes to b4 and blockades the pawn, which is the easily winning position for black. So the question is why black was so faster than white. It's easy to answer. So usually fighting the outside passed pawn takes time. So it is the pawn which is not that easy to get access to. So the king has to spend a lot of moves, a lot of time to grab it. So this gives an opponent the time to start pushing the passed pawn just first, like it was here. So while white was still in the process of eliminating black's pawns, black already started pushing his passed pawn. That's the idea. So outside passed pawn is not the pawn you want to promote necessarily. So it is actually the pawn that really deflects the attention of opponent's king, that makes opponent's king really ugly, and gives you a chance to activate your own king and to eliminate opponent's pawns on the other side of the board, while that king fights your outside passed pawn. So let's have a look on the other example. This example shows another type of powerful pawns. They are connected passed pawns. So what is so special about this type of pawns? Well, these pawns can protect each other without the help of the king. For example, let's have a look on black's pawns. So they are connected passed pawns as well as white's ones. And actually, king can't take on d5 in this situation. For instance, if king takes, then another pawn goes to the queen without limits. e3, let's say king to e6, e2, and we can see that white is just not in time with his counterplay. Black is simply faster in promotion, so promotes and wins. So how to use the power of white's pawns as well? We can see that in the initial position, white's pawns are more advanced than black ones, so this gives white some advantage, some serious advantage actually, because at some point white can just connect the king to those pawns, and with the help of the king, one of these pawns will be definitely promoted. But white has, of course, to calculate variations carefully, accurately, and to find the best moment of getting to the king side with the king. So white also has a chance to push one of his pawns further. The question is which one, right? So let's have a look if white can make progress in different cases. Let's say if f7 check, which looks sensible. Well, in this case, king goes to g7, and again, king e5 or king d5 don't make sense in view of e3. If king goes this way, then after king f8, king f4, and king g7, well, white can't make progress, because as we can see, black's king simply blockaded white's king's way to h6 square, and e5 still leads to e3. If in the initial position white starts with the g7 move, which also grabs more space and now creates a possibility of getting to g6, let's say, with the king. Then after king f7, king e3, king g8, king f4, black still playing king f7 holds the position, because if king goes to g5, then e3, king h6, e2, king h7, e1, g8 queen, king takes f6, and well, here everything that white has is probably a perpetual or taking on d5 with the equal chances, so white can't make progress in this line as well. So let us start with the king e3 move, because after that, well, black has no move with the pawn, of course, so black is forced to make a king move, and after that, something might be changing. So king goes to f8 here, f7, that is the winning move, and now after king g7, white's king comes back to d4. And now it's a bit different, because after king f8, instead of playing king to e5, when black has king to e7 move, which is enough to hold the position, so king takes on d5. And here is the difference, because now e4 pawn is hidden, so black can't really blockade white's way to the king side. So e3 is forced here. Let's say king e7 leads to a very simple win for white. So king takes e4. Now white has simply 2 extra pawns and easily winning position. King f8, king f5, king g7, king g5, king f8. So here it is the last trap actually. It is important not to play king f6, which leads to a stalemate and draw, but to play king h6, so after this move, king is forced away from f8 square, which is an easy win for white. So after king takes d5, black is forced to play e3, and now white has enough time to create decisive threats. So king goes to e6, and now if king goes to g7, let's say, then king e7, so one move earlier if compared to the line that we discussed in the very beginning of this example. So now after e2, f8 queen, so white promotes first, and after king g6, queen goes to f2, stopping the pawn and winning the game. But what happens if black plays e2? So here king goes to f6, and despite black promotes first, white managed to create a threat of a checkmate, and after e1 queen, g7 leads to a checkmate. This is another reason why connected passed pawns are so good. So at some point, you can even come up with this very cute checkmating final. Let's have a look on the other example. This one is very interesting. It looks so obvious, but it is not. So white has 2 pawns, black has 3 pawns, so black has an extra pawn. Moreover, white has not connected pawns, so they look really vulnerable, while black has 3 connected passed pawns. So everything looks clear here, so black should win. And in many lines, it is definitely true. For example, if king goes to b2, after b3, it doesn't really matter where the king goes, let's say to c3, then a3, and one of the pawns simply promotes. So let's say this b2. If king goes to the a3, then c3, and again, king is forced to move, and one of the pawns promotes. If king goes to c1 in the initial position, then after a3, king b1, b3, black just activates all the pawns, and of course it is not possible to save the game. So a2, let's say king to a1 and c2, now forcing the king to b2, and black easily wins, sacrificing one pawn but promoting another one. Here it is a checkmate. So if king goes to d2, then the same. So the best strategy is just to push this a pawn because it takes some time for the king to get closer. So king c2, a2, king b2, b3. So again, the king is forced to move. King a1 is the only move. Now c3, completely restricting the king, so forcing white to make a move with the pawn. So after f7, king takes f7, h7. Of course, if king goes to g7, stopping the pawn, then white sacrifices a pawn with a stalemate. But instead, black has a great idea of c2, and if h8 queen, then c1 queen with a checkmate again. So it looks like black wins in all the variations, but it's not true. So in the very beginning, white has a brilliant move, king to b1, the only move, but an extremely efficient one. So now black is simply in trouble. Let's say if black plays a3 here, then king goes to a2. So now b3 makes no sense because a3 pawn will be hanging. So c3 looks like the only sensible move. And after that, king goes to b3 and black's pawns are stopped. So now any sacrifice makes no sense because pawns are not that close to the first rank, so that every sacrifice will lead to only losing the material but not promoting a pawn. Almost the same happens after c3. King goes to c2, a3, well, and here it is completely the same position. So king goes to b3, again stopping those pawns. So what happens after b3 move? Maybe this helps black. No, in this case, king goes to b2, and again, pawns are stopped. So doesn't really matter which pawn moves, a3 or c3, king simply takes that, and pawns are stopped. What to do? So actually, black still has a king, right? So maybe it makes sense just to wait a bit and to make a move with the king, but well, it doesn't really matter where the king goes. Let's say to f7, white reacts with the h7 and wins. So these pawns simply close the g file and, well, break the access of the king to this file, so that preventing stopping the pawn, and this pawn promotes. The same happens if king goes to h7, so this pawn f6 now moves, and the same, so this pawn controls g8 square, this pawn controls g7 square, and the king can't stop the pawn, so this pawn promotes. And the same happens if king goes to f8 or h8, so one of the pawns moves, and white manages to promote this pawn. So as you can see, sometimes it is much better to have the pawns of this kind, so not connected passed pawns, than connected passed pawns, because in some cases, when these pawns are deep inside opponent's camp, they might be much harder to stop if compared to connected pawns, like in this example. Thanks a lot for your attention. See you in next lessons.